In this book, you will uncover the hidden power within you, awakening the divine potential you've always carried. Journey through stories of transformation and discover how to rise above your fears and limitations. Every chapter is a step towards unlocking your truest self. Prepare to embrace the greatness that was always meant to be yours. Unlocking Divine Potential. Introduction. In every moment of your life, there is a quiet force waiting to be recognized, a potential within you that is as ancient as the stars and as immediate as your next breath. It's not something you need to acquire or discover outside yourself. It's already there, woven into the fabric of your being, patiently waiting for you to acknowledge it. This book, Unlocking Divine Potential, is an invitation to recognize that force and embrace the incredible power that comes with it. Every chapter within these pages will serve as a gentle reminder. You are not here by accident. You are not defined by the struggles you've faced, nor are you the sum of your past mistakes. You are an unfolding story, a dynamic being capable of transcending any limits that the world, or even your own mind, has placed upon you. It is only by unlocking the divine potential that lies within that you will fully realize your truth, your strength, and your capacity for transformation. This journey is not about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you've always been. It's about reconnecting with the divine energy that flows through you and learning to align with it, allowing it to guide you towards a life of purpose, passion, and deep fulfillment. You are not just a passenger in this life. You are the creator of your destiny, the architect of your own reality, and the universe is conspiring in your favor, ready to support your every step as you awaken to the truth of who you are. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and know that the journey of unlocking your divine potential begins now. Chapter 1. The Whisper Within. It was 2:47 a.m. in a small apartment in Detroit when Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking. Not from fear, but from something harder to name. The world was quiet, but inside him, there was noise, doubts, regrets. A lifetime of being told he wasn't enough. He had followed all the rules, college, career, the safe choices, but nothing felt real. That night, as the city slept and his soul screamed, he heard it. Not a voice, not words, just a whisper. Soft, gentle, almost like a memory trying to return. It wasn't coming from outside. It was rising from within, like something sacred buried beneath the noise of years spent trying to fit in. He closed his eyes, breathed. For the first time in decades, he didn't ask for answers. He just listened. And in that stillness, he felt it clearly. The sense that he was meant for more. Not more success, more truth. A life where he didn't have to shrink to be accepted. A life where his divine potential was not something to earn, but something to remember. What changed that night wasn't the world, it was Marcus. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. We are all born with something divine inside. But the world teaches us to silence it, to trade it for approval, safety, or belonging. That whisper within you? It never left. It's waiting for your permission to rise. The question is not whether you are worthy. It's whether you're willing to listen. Because every transformation begins with a whisper, one that dares you to remember who you really are. Chapter 2. Buried Light in Broken Places. In a quiet corner of Detroit, a woman named Lena sat alone in a one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by silence and unpaid bills. She had once dreamed of opening a wellness studio, a space filled with music, healing, and peace. But those dreams were packed away years ago with her yoga mat and hope. Divorce, job loss, and the weight of depression had chipped away at her belief that she was meant for anything greater. She didn't recognize herself anymore. One rainy night, while cleaning out a forgotten closet, she found an old journal. Inside were entries full of visions and affirmations she had written a decade earlier. She stared at her younger self's handwriting, vivid, raw, alive. Tears fell. Not from sadness, but from recognition. That girl still lived inside her. Something stirred. A spark. A whisper. A buried light. Divine potential doesn't disappear. It hides in the cracks we think disqualify us. It waits in the broken places under the ashes of dreams we thought were dead. But light is stubborn. It seeps in where we least expect it. Sometimes pain isn't punishment. It's preparation. What if your lowest point is not the end, but the place your rebirth begins? Lena didn't start a studio the next day, but she rolled out her yoga mat, lit a candle, breathed. That was her first miracle. Not the business, not the comeback, but the decision to believe again. The divine isn't found in perfection. It's discovered when you dare to touch the pieces you once rejected. Your brokenness is not the end of the story. It's where the buried light waits to rise. Chapter 3. When Silence Speaks Louder. In a quiet cabin tucked deep in the Colorado mountains, 42-year-old Melissa sat alone for the first time in years. No TV, no phone, no notifications, just the sound of wind brushing against pine trees and the rhythmic crackle of firewood. A successful corporate trainer with a voice that commanded rooms, Melissa had built a life around being heard. But inside, she was drowning in a silence she had long ignored. After her mother passed away unexpectedly, Melissa began to realize how little time she had spent listening to herself, to her soul, to the stillness that speaks without words. In that cabin, as she journaled by candlelight, something strange happened. It wasn't a voice exactly, but a realization that came like a soft wave. You've mastered performance. Now meet your presence. The message wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost like breath. But it was real. It was alive. And it changed her. She cried, not from sadness, but from recognition. For the first time in decades, she wasn't hiding, behind noise, titles, or expectations. She was simply there. And that presence, that silence, held more truth than 1,000 speeches. That weekend, she made a vow. No more running from stillness. Because silence, she now knew, wasn't empty. It was full of answers. Chapter 4. The Day You Forgot You Were Divine. It was 6:42 a.m. in a quiet Pennsylvania suburb when Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the floor. The soft hum of morning traffic seeped through her window, but she didn't hear. Her heart was heavy. Last night her boss told her she wasn't leadership material. A relationship had just ended. Her reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger. Somewhere between survival and routine, Olivia had forgotten what it felt like to shine, to laugh without apologizing, to walk into a room without shrinking. Forgotten that she wasn't just a title, a paycheck, or someone's second choice. That morning she poured her coffee, sat in silence, and felt an emptiness she couldn't explain. But under that silence, there was a faint whisper. Not a voice in her ears, but in her soul. It didn't shout. It didn't demand. It just was. And it said, You are more than this moment. You are divine. We all have a day like Olivia's. A moment when the world's noise drowns out the truth of who we are. The day we forget we were born with light in our bones, with the sacred encoded into our cells. The world teaches us to be realistic, not radiant. It tells us to dim down so others can shine. But your divinity isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. And it never leaves. Even when you doubt, even when you fall, even when the mirror lies, the divine within you waits patiently, like a flame that never dies out, just needing one breath of belief to blaze again. So if today is your day, the day you forgot, you can also make it the day you remember. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. I was always more than enough. Chapter 5. Cracks that let grace in. Monica stood in the center of her small apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, staring at the boxes stacked around her. She had just finalized her divorce after 11 years of trying to fix something that kept falling apart. Her job felt like a cage. Her friends felt distant, and her mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized. One afternoon, with nothing left to hold on to, she collapsed on her living room floor and wept. Deep, guttural sobs that came from a place so raw she didn't know existed. That moment, though it felt like complete ruin, became the beginning of something holy. In the months that followed, Monica stopped pretending she was okay. She wrote, she prayed, she screamed into pillows, she let the pain speak. And slowly, through those cracks in her heart, something unexpected began to seep through. Grace. Not the type she heard about in church, but a quiet, living grace. Igor, kind that sits with you on the floor and says, "You're still worthy." She began to see beauty in her own brokenness. It wasn't about being fixed. It was about being found. And that's when she realized the cracks weren't failures. They were invitations. We are not here to be perfect. We are here to be real. And real often means messy, unsure, shattered. But in those fractures, when everything seems lost, that's where grace shows up. Divine potential isn't born from strength alone. It awakens through the parts of us that felt forgotten. Your cracks aren't the end of your story, they're the opening lines of a new chapter. So the next time you feel broken, don't rush to patch it up. Let grace pour in. Let it teach you. Let it hold you. Because what feels like the end might just be the divine beginning. Chapter 6. Mirrors don't lie, but they don't show everything. Maya stood frozen in the dressing room of a high-end boutique in New York City, staring at herself under the unforgiving fluorescent lights. The dress fit perfectly, the color flattered her skin, and yet something felt off. She tilted her head, sucked in her stomach, forced a smile. But the woman in the mirror looked exhausted. Not physically, but spiritually, like a candle flickering at the end of its wick. She wasn't just seeing her reflection. She was seeing her insecurities, her unspoken doubts, the years she had spent trying to become enough. Enough for her family. Enough for her job. Enough for society. And even now, in a dress that made strangers turn their heads, she couldn't feel the worth she was hoping the mirror would confirm. The truth is, mirrors don't lie, but they don't show everything either. They capture the surface, the appearance, the shell. But they miss the essence. They don't reveal the battles you fought silently. They don't reflect your resilience, your kindness, or your inner strength. Maya had spent so long trusting the mirror to tell her who she was that she forgot to look deeper, to see with the eyes of her soul, not just her face. One evening, Maya sat in front of her mirror again, but this time with a journal in hand. She began writing not about how she looked, but about who she was. For the first time she saw her divine potential, not as a polished image, but as a radiant force that could not be contained by glass or judgment. Her reflection didn't change that night, but her perception did, and that made all the difference. Chapter 7. The Courage to Come Back Home. It was a cold morning in Asheville, North Carolina, when Jordan finally pulled into the driveway of the house he'd sworn he'd never return to. The engine of his dusty pickup clicked softly as it cooled, but the real noise was inside, his heartbeat pounding in his ears, his thoughts louder than the wind that rustled the fallen leaves. This house had seen him at his worst. The nights he drank too much, the arguments he slammed doors through, the time he left without a goodbye. But this house also held his roots, his mother's humming, his father's quiet prayers, and a little boy's dreams taped to a bedroom wall. It had taken 5 years, a divorce, a failed business, and a therapist in another city to bring him back to this cracked porch and fading paint. Coming home wasn't weakness. It was a kind of bravery no one had ever taught him. He rang the bell with trembling fingers, half hoping no one would answer. But when the door opened and his mother stood there with eyes filled with tears, not anger, it shattered something in him. Sometimes the hardest journey isn't forward. It's the path back, to your origin, to your truth, to yourself. Sacred return. We spend so much of life running toward dreams, running from pain, running to become someone. But your divine potential isn't out there. It's in the quiet corners of who you already are. Coming home is not about a physical place. It's about returning to the truth of your spirit, before the guilt, before the shame, before the fear told you to hide. Real power begins when you stop trying to prove your worth and start remembering it. You don't need to build a new version of yourself. You need to uncover the one who never left. That takes courage. That takes love. And most of all, it takes truth. The divine waits not in the future, but in the place you abandoned, home. Come back to it, not because you failed, but because your light belongs there. Chapter 8. The Lie You Believed About Yourself. We often hear the phrase, "You are enough." But do we truly believe it? For many, the journey to embracing our divine potential starts with unraveling the lies we've been told, or more often, the lies we've told ourselves. One powerful story that highlights this truth comes from a woman named Sarah. Sarah, a 34-year-old artist from Chicago, spent the majority of her life feeling like she wasn't enough. Raised in a household where perfection was demanded, she internalized the belief that her worth was tied to her achievements. "You're only valuable if you're productive," her parents would say, praising accomplishments but rarely offering love without a tangible result. This belief became a cage she couldn't escape. Her value felt conditional, and no matter how many art exhibitions she had, how many projects she completed, it never felt like enough. But it wasn't until Sarah hit rock bottom that the lie she had been believing about herself was revealed. At 30, after a series of failures and feeling disconnected from her art, Sarah finally broke down. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and burnt out. The woman who once painted with wild abandon now faced blank canvases, paralyzed by the overwhelming need to be perfect. It was in this dark moment that she realized the very thing that was holding her back was the belief that she had to prove her worth. She had been operating under the lie that her value was earned. The truth? Sarah's worth was never tied to her productivity. It was inherent. It had always been within her. The same truth is within all of us. We are valuable not because of what we do, but because of who we are. We all have a version of Sarah's story. We all have believed something about ourselves that limits our potential. Whether it's that we're not good enough, that we have to be perfect, or that we're unworthy of success or love, these lies infiltrate our minds and hearts. The sacred practice. The moment we begin to challenge the lies we've told ourselves is when divine potential begins to unlock. To begin, take a moment today to reflect on a belief you hold about yourself that might not be true. Perhaps you feel like you're not enough, or you believe you can't reach your full potential. Write down this belief and ask yourself, is this truly who I am? Then, counter that belief with a truth that resonates with your divine potential. Write that truth down and place it somewhere you can see every day. Embrace this practice as a reminder that the truth of who you are goes far beyond the limitations you've been conditioned to believe. Chapter 9. Your wounds were never wasted. There's a story that's often told about the great artist, Michelangelo. It's said that when he sculpted his masterpieces, like the statue of David, he didn't see the block of marble as an untouched, perfect piece of stone. No. He saw the figure trapped inside it, waiting to be freed. For Michelangelo, the chisel was his tool of liberation. Every strike was not an attempt to destroy the marble, but rather to reveal what was already there, hidden, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In a sense, your wounds are much like that block of marble. The pain you've endured, the struggles you've faced, and the heartaches you've carried, they are not signs of weakness. Instead, they are tools. Tools that, when used wisely, can carve away the layers of illusion and show you the truest version of yourself. You might have spent years asking why things didn't go as planned or why certain things happened to you. You might have even tried to bury your wounds deep, thinking they were too much to face. But here's the truth. Your wounds were never wasted. They are the very tools that shape you into the person you were always meant to be. Take, for instance, Oprah Winfrey. She grew up in poverty, faced abuse, and was told she wasn't worthy of greatness. But she didn't let those wounds define her as broken. Instead, Oprah used them as stepping stones, and today, she stands as one of the most influential women in the world. Her pain became the catalyst for her strength. Her wounds became the fuel for her purpose. It's not just Oprah. Think of J.K. Rowling, whose life was filled with rejection and hardship before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. She had to navigate depression, financial struggles, and personal losses, but those experiences provided the depth and authenticity that would eventually connect her to millions of readers. The wounds, the struggles, the pain. They are what make your story rich and compelling. If you look at your life through the lens of transformation, you'll see that each hardship is like a chisel striking the marble, revealing a new layer of who you are becoming. Now, think about your own wounds. What have they taught you? How have they shaped the person you are today? When you stop seeing your struggles as obstacles and start seeing them as stepping stones, you unlock a deeper strength within yourself. Your wounds were never wasted. They are part of your divine potential, waiting to be fully realized. Chapter 10. The Flame That Wouldn't Die. There was a woman named Claire, living in a small town in California. She wasn't famous, and she didn't have an extraordinary life on the surface. Yet, within her, there was a fire, a passion that no hardship could ever extinguish. From a young age, Claire had always dreamed of helping others, but life's circumstances seemed to pull her in a different direction. She worked a typical office job, day in and day out, barely making enough to cover her bills. It wasn't the life she had imagined. It wasn't where she saw herself when she was a child, full of hopes and dreams of changing the world. But as the years went by, something inside her began to fade. She lost herself in the monotony of everyday life. The fire, once bright, was dimming. She felt stuck, as if the flame that burned inside her had all but gone out. Then one evening something unexpected happened. It was during a walk in the park, the same park she had walked through every day for years, but this time the air felt different. There was a stillness, a quiet, that seemed to fill the space between every thought. And that's when it happened. Claire felt it, a spark deep within. It wasn't loud and it wasn't flashy, it wasn't some grand realization. It was a quiet knowing that she still had more to give, that the flame inside her had never truly died. It had only been waiting for her to remember it. This moment wasn't a dramatic change in her life, but it was a shift. Claire realized that the passion and fire she had felt in her youth had never left her. It had just been overshadowed by fear, by self-doubt, by life's distractions. But now, she understood. The flame inside her wasn't going to die unless she chose to let it. That night Claire took a leap. She started writing again, something she had given up years ago. She didn't wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect outcome. She just began. Each word she wrote felt like fuel to the fire, each sentence reigniting a part of her soul she thought was long gone. Over the months, Claire's writing began to grow. She took the stories, the wisdom and the lessons she had learned and shared them with others. It wasn't a grand beginning, but it was a true one. And that's when she discovered the power of the flame that wouldn't die. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment or the right circumstances. It was about choosing to act even when the path was unclear. It was about trusting that the flame inside her, no matter how faint it seemed, was still a part of her. And that flame would light the way one step at a time. The flame inside you, no matter how small it seems, has the power to burn brighter than you could ever imagine. Sometimes life dims it, but it's never truly gone. Don't wait for a grand moment to reignite your passion. Start small, start now, and trust that the flame will lead you forward. Chapter 11. You were never ordinary. In a quiet town in the heart of America, a young woman named Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the photograph of a girl she no longer recognized. It was a picture from her childhood, back when she still believed in magic, when everything seemed possible. As Sarah looked at the photo, something stirred deep within her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. She had grown up in a world that taught her to stay small, to be just another face in the crowd. She was encouraged to follow the rules, blend in and live up to the expectations of others. And for a while she did just that. But life, as it often does, had other plans. The years had been hard, filled with loss, confusion, and moments where she felt completely invisible. Somewhere along the way, Sarah had forgotten who she was, the powerful, radiant force that had once lit up every room. That was until the day she met a stranger who would forever change the course of her life. It was a Tuesday morning at a local coffee shop, where Sarah had always gone for her morning ritual of coffee and quiet. The stranger, a woman with striking silver hair and a kind smile, sat down at her table and began to speak. "You've forgotten something, haven't you?" the woman asked, as if she had known Sarah her whole life. "I don't understand," Sarah replied, her voice tinged with both confusion and curiosity. "You were never ordinary," the woman said. "You were born with a spark, a gift that the world needs, but you've let it dim. You've let the world tell you that you're just like everyone else, but you're not. You're special. And it's time to remember that." In that moment, something clicked inside Sarah. The years of doubt, the feeling of being lost, all began to fade. She realized that she had spent so much time trying to fit into a mold that wasn't hers, that she had forgotten to honor the truth of who she really was. Sarah wasn't just ordinary. She was extraordinary and always had been. She was a force of nature, capable of moving mountains, of inspiring others, and of living a life that was full of purpose. As the woman stood to leave, she smiled and said, "Remember this. You were never ordinary. You were always meant for greatness. Never forget that." Sacred practice. Take a moment to reflect on your life. Where have you been holding yourself back, believing that you're just like everyone else? What part of you has been waiting to break free? Today, let yourself remember your extraordinary potential. What small action can you take today to honor the unique spark that lives within you? Chapter 12. The Invisible Threads That Led You Here. There was a young woman named Claire, living in the bustling city of Chicago, who often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the outside, her life seemed picture perfect: a successful career, a close-knit group of friends, and a comfortable home. But beneath the surface, there was a quiet unrest. She couldn't shake the feeling that something deep inside her was missing. A part of her that was buried, waiting to be discovered. She often wondered, how did I get here? One rainy evening, while walking through the city, Claire stumbled upon an old bookstore tucked away in a corner she had never noticed before. Something about it seemed magnetic. She pushed open the door, the sound of the bell echoing softly as she entered. As she browsed the aisles, a book caught her eye, its cover worn, its pages yellowed with age. The title read, "The Tapestry of Fate." Drawn to it, she picked it up and began flipping through the pages. It wasn't long before she found herself engrossed in the words that spoke of life as a delicate, intricate weave of moments, decisions, and connections. Each one seemingly random, but somehow leading us to where we're meant to be. As she read, Claire was struck by the realization that everything in her life had led her to this very point. Every job she'd taken, every person she'd met, every mistake she'd made, and every triumph had been an invisible thread in the grand tapestry of her existence. It wasn't always clear at the time, but in hindsight, she saw how each experience had shaped her, guided her, and prepared her for the life she was living now. The book spoke of how we often feel lost, as if we're drifting through life without direction, but in truth, each experience is a thread in the larger pattern of who we are becoming. Some threads are bright and bold, some are dark and painful, but all are essential to the design. The key, the book suggested, was learning to trust the process, even when we couldn't see the full picture. Claire closed the book, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She now understood that the invisible threads were never random. They were part of something much larger than herself. Every decision she had made, no matter how small, had played a role in her growth. The doubts, the heartaches, the challenges, they were the threads that had woven her strength, wisdom, and resilience. Even the moments when she felt lost were a necessary part of the journey. And so, as she left the bookstore that evening, Claire walked with a new sense of clarity. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she no longer felt afraid of the unknown. She knew now that the invisible threads were always there, guiding her, even when she couldn't see them. Chapter 13. Stop apologizing for your power. For years, Tara felt the weight of her own strength like a burden. She grew up in a small town in Indiana, where expectations were simple, and staying humble was the highest virtue. From a young age, she was told to stay small, don't rock the boat, and be polite. But Tara's power was undeniable. She had a voice that commanded attention, an intelligence that sparkled in every conversation, and a presence that could light up a room. Yet every time she stood in her own light, a part of her shrank. She apologized for it. As Tara entered adulthood, her journey became a series of apologetic moments, holding back in meetings, softening her brilliance so others wouldn't feel threatened, dimming her light to fit in. She worked twice as hard to make people comfortable with who she was, never fully embracing the truth of her own abilities. It wasn't until one evening, standing in front of a mirror after a long day of feeling unseen, that she realized something. She had spent her whole life apologizing for being powerful. What Tara didn't know back then was that power isn't something you take from others. It's something you give back to the world when you finally claim it for yourself. She'd been conditioned to believe that power was a scarce resource, something to be feared or worse, something that would make people dislike her. But when Tara began to question that belief, the truth hit her like a lightning bolt. The world didn't need her to shrink. The world needed her to step into her power unapologetically. It wasn't an easy shift. She spent years unlearning everything that told her to apologize for her strength. But the more she leaned into her natural gifts, the more she found that the people who mattered, who truly saw her, respected her for it. She learned that her brilliance wasn't a threat. It was an invitation for others to rise as well. She no longer apologized for speaking her truth, for setting boundaries, or for showing up in full force. She no longer dimmed her light for the sake of anyone else's comfort. What Tara realized is this: when we apologize for our power, we deny the world the gift of our full potential. We send the message that we aren't worthy of the space we take up. But when we stop apologizing, when we claim our power with humility and grace, we unlock something far greater: the ability to inspire others to do the same. You are not here to play small. Your power is a gift, not just to you, but to everyone you encounter. When you stand tall in your own light, you give permission for others to stand in theirs too. The world needs people like you, people who are not afraid to shine, to speak their truth, and to live unapologetically. It's time to stop apologizing for your power and start living as if you know you are meant for greatness. Because you are. Chapter 14. Fear is the gate, not the wall. The town of Jackson, Wyoming was blanketed in the kind of snow that made everything look pristine, untouched, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Susan, a single mother of two, had always loved the snow. It reminded her of the peace that could be found in the most unlikely places. But peace was something Susan hadn't felt in years, not since her divorce, and the heavy burden of raising two children on her own. Her mind was filled with doubts and the constant weight of fear. It wasn't the fear of failure, not exactly. It was something deeper, an irrational, unspoken fear that her dreams, her desires, her ambitions weren't meant to be. It was the kind of fear that made her second-guess herself at every turn. She'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, but each time she thought about taking that first step, the fear crept in, paralyzing her. What if it didn't work? What if she failed her children? What if she never amounted to anything? One evening she sat in her kitchen, staring at her laptop, trying to muster the courage to submit her business idea to a local grant competition. The fear was overwhelming. It felt like a heavy wall pressing down on her chest. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "What if it's not meant to be?" It was in that moment, as she sipped her cold cup of coffee, that she heard a voice, clear, almost like a whisper. Fear is the gate, not the wall. It wasn't a loud voice, but it was undeniable. Something in her stirred. The phrase echoed in her mind, growing louder with each passing second. Fear is the gate, not the wall. She sat up straighter, her heart beating a little faster. For the first time, Susan saw fear in a different light. What if fear wasn't something to avoid, something that blocked her path? What if it was something to move through, something that once conquered would open a door to the life she truly wanted? With trembling hands, Susan closed her eyes again, allowing the thought to settle deep within her spirit. Fear is the gate, not the wall. It was an invitation, not a barrier. An opportunity to cross through into a new world. A world where she had the courage to live her dreams. That night, Susan did something she'd never done before. She clicked submit on the grant application, and the next morning, the world seemed a little different. Chapter 15. The Hidden Map in Your Heart. There was a man named Jack from the bustling streets of New York City. To the outside world, he was an ordinary man with a 9-to-5 job, a small apartment, and a schedule that felt like it was set, in stone. Yet deep within Jack, something was stirring, something he couldn't explain. It wasn't a crisis, but it was a calling, a feeling that there was more to life than what he had known so far. Every night, Jack would sit on his small balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars in a concrete sky. He felt small in this massive world, but at the same time he felt the weight of something greater pressing against his chest. It wasn't anxiety, nor was it fear. It was a quiet, persistent desire to find something deeper, something true. He had a sense that there was a path waiting for him, but he couldn't quite see it. He didn't know what it was, but he knew he wasn't meant to live the rest of his life as a passenger in his own journey. What Jack didn't realize was that he wasn't lost at all. The truth was, he had a hidden map within him, one that had been there all along, tucked beneath layers of routine and expectation. This map wasn't drawn on paper, and it wasn't something he could find by looking at his surroundings. It was a map of the heart, guiding him toward the person he was always meant to be. The hidden map in your heart is a calling you've been carrying since the moment you were born. It's there, beneath the layers of your past mistakes, your fears, and your doubts. It's not a physical map, but it's a blueprint of your soul, marking out the steps to your true path. It's the feeling you get when something resonates deeply within you. When you hear a song, a phrase, or a story that feels like it's been written for you. For Jack, the map started to show itself in unexpected places. A book about self-discovery he found at a cafe one afternoon. A conversation with a stranger about his passion for photography. A trip to a place he'd always wanted to visit, but never had the courage to. Slowly, the map began to reveal itself, not in the way Jack expected, but in moments of inspiration and clarity. Each experience was a marker on the map, pulling him closer to the life he was meant to live. It was never about knowing all the answers immediately. The hidden map in your heart isn't about a destination. It's about the journey of uncovering who you are. It's about following the signs, trusting the whispers, and listening to the voice inside you that knows the truth, even when the world around you says otherwise. Your map is unique to you. No one else can follow it in the same way. It's shaped by your experiences, your passions, your pain, and your purpose. And though it might be hidden now, it's always been there, waiting for you to trust it. When you begin to listen to your heart, the path will begin to unfold in ways that are more beautiful than you could ever imagine. The journey of discovering the hidden map in your heart is not always easy. There will be doubts and setbacks. But remember this, just like Jack, you are not lost. The answers are already within you. You just need to look closely, listen deeply, and trust that the map has always been there, guiding you toward your divine potential. Chapter 16. They tried to bury you, but you were a seed. There was a man named James who lived in the quiet town of Fairview. He wasn't famous or rich, but he was deeply loved by those who knew him. He had a heart that wanted to help people, a mind that always questioned the world around him, and a spirit that never quite fit into the mold society had carved out for him. From a young age, James was told that he wasn't enough. He was too sensitive, too curious, too different. As he grew older, the world seemed to confirm these thoughts. His dreams were too big, his goals too bold. People called him unrealistic, told him he should be practical, and that he should stop trying to stand out. But deep down, he knew there was something more inside of him, something powerful that hadn't yet fully emerged. James began to lose his way for a while, weighed down by the doubts of others. He tried to conform, to play the role that everyone around him expected. He buried his true self under layers of practicality and compromise. But no matter how hard he tried to fit in, the discomfort of pretending to be someone he wasn't never quite went away. It was as though there was a seed deep within him, always pushing to grow, to break through the soil of his resistance. Then one day, something changed. James was walking home from work when he stumbled upon an old, abandoned garden near the edge of town. The weeds had overtaken the space, and the flowers that once bloomed there were long gone. But as he walked through the garden, he noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. A small, stubborn flower growing in the midst of the weeds. It was fragile, yes, but it was also beautiful and bold. It had grown in the most unlikely of places, and it had refused to be buried under the weight of the world around it. At that moment, James realized something he had been overlooking all his life. They tried to bury him, but he was a seed. Just like that flower, he had always had the potential to grow, to rise above the expectations, the doubts, and the negativity. But he had to first accept that the soil of struggle had been preparing him for something greater. Life wasn't about avoiding the weeds or the harsh winds. It was about finding the strength to keep growing despite them. The world couldn't define him unless he let it. And no matter how buried he had felt at times, his true self was still there waiting to emerge. That day in the garden, James made a decision to stop pretending, to stop allowing others' fears to dictate his path. He didn't need permission to be who he was meant to be. His dreams, his curiosity, and his sensitivity weren't flaws to be hidden. They were the very things that made him unique. He was no longer going to let life's challenges define him. He was going to let them nourish him, just like the soil that had once hidden that stubborn little flower. The lesson: you are not what the world has tried to make you. You are not your failures, your mistakes, or the judgments others have cast upon you. You are a seed, planted in the soil of struggle, waiting for the right moment to burst forth into your full potential. The world can try to bury you, but it can never take away the power inside you to grow, rise, and thrive. You were born for greatness. It's time to let yourself blossom. Chapter 17. Even the stars have scars. Under the ink-black sky, where stars twinkle as if caught in a dance of eternity, there is a secret most don't see. The stars, brilliant and shining, aren't perfect. They've been through battles that the human eye could never fully comprehend. There are scars hidden in their light, deep, ancient wounds that they carry with grace. Take, for example, the story of one particular star. Known in the universe for its brilliance, it had once burned brighter than the others. It was the kind of star that guided sailors across vast oceans, a beacon of hope in the darkest nights. But its brilliance didn't come without cost. It had collided with others, smaller, weaker stars that were once in its path. The impact left scars on its surface, faint marks that couldn't be seen by anyone who gazed up from Earth. But those scars were real. In time, this star became known as one of the brightest in the sky, but few understood that it had fought battles, endured collisions, and paid a price to shine the way it did. In our own lives, we are much like this star. We often think we need to be perfect, to show no weakness, to shine without revealing the battles we've fought. We wear our scars in silence, hiding our struggles from the world around us. But, just like the stars, our scars don't make us any less magnificent. In fact, they are the very proof of our resilience and the source of our strength. We live in a world that often values perfection. Social media feeds are filled with polished versions of people's lives, making us feel as though we should be without flaw. But the truth is, it is in our scars that our true potential lies. Every hardship, every failure, every loss, it all leaves a mark. But those marks are not what diminish us. They are what elevate us. Consider a diamond. It's a gem formed under extreme pressure that could shatter weaker stones. But the diamond doesn't break. It endures, forming facets that catch the light in ways that no other stone can. Our scars are the facets of our soul, catching the light of our experiences and reflecting a strength that only those who have truly endured can understand. The stars teach us this. The more they've been through, the more they shine. They are not dimmed by their scars. Instead, their scars become part of the story they tell. We too must stop hiding from our own battles. We are all stars in the making, each scar, each struggle adding depth and beauty to our light. When you look at the night sky tonight, remember this. Even the stars have scars. Their light doesn't come from perfection, it comes from the beauty of survival. And so does yours. Chapter 18. Rise Without Permission. In 1957, a young woman named Maya Angelou sat in a small room in San Francisco. She had just spent several years of her life in silence, unsure of what voice she had left after surviving years of abuse, trauma, and fear. Despite the weight of her past, Maya was beginning to discover something within herself that she had long buried, an unshakable desire to rise, to speak, and to reclaim her power. It wasn't until later in life that Maya would fully embrace the truth that the permission she had long waited for, whether from society, her family, or her circumstances, had always been hers to give. She rose without asking for permission. Maya's journey is one of countless stories where the external world did not offer a green light. In fact, the world often presented obstacles, doubts, and limitations that said, "Stay where you are." It was only when she started to see that the power to rise had been in her all along that she began to truly soar. And like Maya, you too have the ability to rise from the depths of doubt and fear without needing anyone's approval. We've all been there at some point, haven't we? Whether it's the expectation of a parent, a partner, or society itself, we often feel like we need permission to step into our greatness. But the truth is, waiting for someone to say you can do it is a sure way to stay stuck. The world doesn't owe us an invitation to rise. It simply demands that we claim it for ourselves. To rise without permission means to step into your life with boldness. It's the audacity to say, "I am worthy," even when no one else is saying it. It's knowing that you don't need validation from others when you've already validated yourself. It's understanding that the moment you give yourself permission to rise, the entire universe starts rearranging to support you. Maya Angelou's story didn't end with her reclaiming her voice. She went on to become a poet, a teacher, and a beacon of wisdom, inspiring millions to embrace their own power to rise. She was a living testament to the fact that no matter how many times you fall, you can always rise again, on your own terms. You may have been knocked down, shut down, or even told you weren't enough. But I'm here to tell you, the permission you've been waiting for has always been within you. It's time to step up, to rise, and to take ownership of your divine potential. You are not waiting for permission from anyone but yourself. Chapter 19. The Promise in Your Pain. There's a moment in every person's life when the weight of the world seems unbearable, when every step forward feels like it's pulling you deeper into the ground. For Jessica, a mother from Ohio, that moment came when she lost her father to cancer. A woman of deep faith, Jessica had always believed that life had a purpose, that every trial had a lesson, and yet nothing could prepare her for the crushing grief that followed his death. She spent weeks in a fog, questioning everything. Her father, the man who had always been a beacon of strength, was gone. How could she move forward without him? How could she keep going when every part of her felt shattered, like the pieces of a puzzle that no longer fit together? One evening, while sitting alone in her father's study, she opened a letter he had written to her years ago, before his illness. The letter was filled with wisdom, love, and encouragement, but one sentence caught her eye. When life gives you pain, remember, it's not the end of the story. It's the turning point to something greater. Those words hit her like a lightning bolt. In her darkest moment, she realized her father had left her a promise. Hidden within the pain, there was something greater waiting to unfold. She just needed to trust the process, even if it didn't make sense right away. Through her grief, Jessica started to find strength in the smallest of moments. She began volunteering at a local shelter, helping others who were going through their own struggles. And with each person she helped, a piece of the weight she carried began to lift. Slowly but surely, her pain transformed into purpose. It wasn't that the pain disappeared, it was that the promise within it was revealed. She was being shaped into someone stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around her. Jessica's journey is a powerful reminder that pain is not the enemy. It's often the very thing that opens us to our divine potential. In the face of suffering, we're given the chance to transform, to rise higher than we were before. The pain may feel unbearable, but within it lies a promise. You are capable of growing through what you go through. When we learn to embrace pain, not as something to escape, but as something that can refine us, we unlock a deeper strength. A strength that comes not from avoiding pain, but from moving through it with faith. Just like a seed must break open to grow into a tree, we too must face our pain to unlock the fullness of who we are meant to be. Chapter 20. Becoming who you were before the world told you who to be. There's a story about a child born in a small, forgotten town in America. Her name was Maya, and she was a dreamer from the start, always finding herself lost in the vastness of the sky, wondering about stars and the stories they told. As a young girl, she would run through the fields near her home, pretending she was an explorer, discovering new worlds. To her, the world was infinite, and so were her possibilities. But as Maya grew older, the world began to shrink around her. Her teachers told her what was realistic, her friends pointed out what was cool, and her family had a clear, simple path mapped out for her. It was one that didn't stray from the norm. Don't aim too high, they cautioned. Be practical. Play it safe. Slowly, the vast sky she once saw through childlike wonder began to be replaced with walls built by society's expectations, by the boxes people placed her in. She became a version of herself that the world approved of, a version that conformed to the rules set before her. She stopped running freely in the fields, and instead walked a straight line, her every step dictated by what others thought she should be. She followed the script, got good grades, made friends, earned a living. But inside something felt hollow. The dreams she once had were pushed to the back of her mind, lost somewhere beneath all the layers of should and must. It wasn't Until one quiet evening years later, when Maya sat alone on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors, that she realized the life she was living was someone else's story. The person she had become was shaped by the voices around her, not the one deep inside her. She hadn't been living her life. She had been living a life dictated by fear, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not fitting in. Maya's heart stirred in that moment as she remembered the little girl who used to run without hesitation, who felt the weight of the world lift as she allowed her imagination to soar. She felt an unfamiliar, yet welcome, sense of clarity. That was the person she had always been, unfiltered, unapologetic, and free. She realized that the world had never told her who she truly was. It had only told her who she should be. And now, it was her turn to listen to the only voice that truly mattered, the one that had always been there, buried beneath the noise. As Maya's story unfolded in that quiet moment, she began to take steps toward remembering the truth of her soul. She didn't need permission. She didn't need approval. All she needed was to become who she had always been, long before the world told her who to be. Like Maya, many of us have forgotten the wild, untamed version of ourselves. We've buried our true potential beneath the expectations of others. But there is power in remembering. There is magic in shedding the layers of conformity and embracing the vastness of who we are meant to be. Today, let go of the labels. Step away from the judgments, and remember the truth of who you were before the world told you who to be. Conclusion. As you close the pages of Unlocking Divine Potential, remember that this journey is not one of final destinations, but of continuous awakening. The stories shared here are not merely tales of struggle and triumph. They are reflections of your own potential waiting to be unlocked. The whisper within you has always been there, urging you to step beyond the ordinary and embrace the divine essence that resides in your soul. You have everything you need to walk your path, to overcome the challenges, and to discover the truth of who you are. The divine potential within you is not an abstract concept. It is a living, breathing force that empowers every thought, every choice, and every moment. The moment you accept your true nature is the moment you begin to unlock a life that is as limitless as the stars. In this journey, you may face times of doubt, times when the road ahead seems unclear. But understand this. Even in the darkest hours, you are guided. Even when you feel most alone, you are never truly apart from the divine presence that is always within you. You are connected to something much greater than your fears, your limitations, and your past. Remember that the key to unlocking your divine potential lies in your hands, through your belief, your choices, and your commitment to seeing the truth of who you are. The world may try to shape you, but your spirit is unshakable. It will bend to no one. You are destined for greatness, not because of what the world expects, but because of what your soul already knows. So, carry these teachings forward, with the unshakable belief that you are worthy, you are powerful, and you are divine. Let this book be a reminder, not of the end, but of the beginning of your true journey. The universe is unfolding its secrets to you. Open your heart, listen closely, and step into the life that awaits you.